Everyone has a home, except me. The whisper was so faint it nearly drowned in the rustle of winter leaves. But Elliot Carter heard it sharp as a pin in the silence of the park. It was nearing midnight in Lincoln Park, Chicago. Snow had not yet fallen, but the wind bit through wool and bone alike. Elliot, wrapped in his charcoal overcoat, had chosen to walk alone. No chauffeur, no bodyguards, just silence and gravel under his shoes. He liked walking here at night. The quiet reminded him that even billionaires could vanish for a while, at least in the dark. But tonight, the dark whispered back. He turned his head toward the voice and saw her. A little black girl, no older than 6 or 7, curled up next to a dented trash bin. Her coat was scorched at the hem. The cheap synthetic fabric melted into curls like plastic. Her socks were mismatched. Her hair was tangled. And her eyes, those wide, dark eyes, looked far older than they had any right to. She was shaking, crying. And yet, she wasn't calling for help. Elliot hesitated before stepping forward. The gravel crunched under his leather soles. The girl's head snapped up. "Stay back," she cried, scrambling to her feet and backing away until her shoulders hit the trash bin. Elliot froze. "It's okay," he said gently, raising his hands in the cold air. "I'm not going to hurt you." Her chest rose and fell rapidly, panic flickering in her eyes. "I don't want trouble," she said, voice cracking. "You're not in trouble," he replied, lowering himself slightly. "I just heard what you said." She stared at him, suspicious. "Why were you listening?" "I wasn't trying to," Elliot said truthfully. "But I heard you, and it stopped me." The girl didn't reply. Her eyes darted toward the sidewalk, considering escape. Elliot slowly reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small, unopened packet, a chocolate chip cookie, the kind he always took from hotel lobbies and never ate. "I have this," he said, crouching and gently placing it on the bench between them. "You don't have to come closer. I'll step back." He rose slowly and backed away 3 steps. The girl stared at the packet for a long moment. Her breathing steadied. Then, cautiously, she reached out and took it. Her fingers trembled as she opened it, and when she bit into the cookie, her face changed just a flicker, but Elliot saw it. "I'm Elliot," he said quietly. She nodded slowly. "Anna, are you hurt?" She shook her head. "Not outside. Where are your parents?" Her shoulders dropped. They burned. Elliot's breath caught. "What?" "The fire took everything. Mama, Papa, even my cat. All gone." Elliot crouched again, this time a little closer, not enough to scare her. "You were in the fire?" Anna nodded, chewing. "We had candles for Grandma's birthday in heaven. But the wind came. Then everything turned orange." "Ugh." She pulled up her sleeve. Elliot saw the pink sheen of scar tissue along her wrist. "I ran out. I don't know how. I just did." Elliot's voice softened. "That must have been terrifying." She didn't answer, just kept chewing. "They put me in a shelter," she said at last. "Too many kids, too loud. A boy stole my shoes. A girl pulled my hair and said I smell like smoke." If this story touched your heart, let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear where you're watching from and what this meant to you. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more powerful stories like this one. Your support helps these voices be heard. She looked down. "So I left." Elliot sat on the other end of the bench, far, but near enough to hear her. "How long have you been on your own?" She shrugged. "What day is it?" "Tuesday." "Oh." Her brow furrowed. "Then maybe a week. Or 10 days. No one noticed?" She gave a weak smile. "People don't see you if you don't make noise." He stared at her, this fragile burned bird of a child, eating a cookie like it was her first meal in days. "Do you have anywhere to go tonight?" he asked. "Number. Would you let me help?" Anna looked at him carefully. "You gonna put me in a cage?" "Number, I just want to make sure you're safe." She nodded slowly. "Okay. Can I call someone for you?" "There's no one left." Elliot looked down at the pavement. The wind howled through bare branches above them. "You have a house?" Anna asked suddenly. "Yes. Does anyone wait for you there?" He hesitated. "No." "Then we're kinda the same." Elliot didn't respond. She pulled out a small, blackened stuffed bear from behind the trash can. One ear missing, fur matted with soot. "His name's Marvin," she said. "Can he come too?" "Of course." From across the street, a woman emerged from the shadows of the park path, tall, bundled in layers, her breath fogging the air. "Anna," she called. "Baby?" Anna looked up. "Aunt Lorraine." The woman rushed over, panic turning to confusion as she saw Elliot standing near the child. "I'm Elliot Carter," he said gently. She was cold. "I stopped to check." Lorraine's eyes narrowed. "You the real Elliot Carter?" He nodded. "I am. I don't care who you are," she said firmly. "If you scared her." "He gave me a cookie," Anna interrupted, holding up the wrapper. Lorraine looked between them, then sighed. "This city don't care about kids like her." "Not really." "I do," Elliot said. A long pause. "You hungry?" he asked. Anna nodded. "Dinner's on me," he said, glancing at Lorraine. "All of you." They exchanged glances. Lorraine finally nodded. As they walked toward the waiting black sedan, Anna leaned into Elliot and whispered, "I was scared when you came close." "I know," he said. "But then I smelled chocolate," she added with a smile. "Chocolate smells like good people." Elliot smiled back, and for the first time in years, he hoped she was right. The diner sat on the quiet edge of Roosevelt Road, its red neon sign buzzing faintly above a smudged glass door. Mama Lou's, home cookin', since 1954. It wasn't 5 stars or anything Elliot Carter would normally step into, but tonight, it was perfect. Warm, lived in, familiar. In a way even his penthouse never managed to be. As soon as they entered, a gust of warm air wrapped around them, bringing with it the scent of fried chicken, cinnamon, and buttered cornbread. Anna inhaled deeply. "Smells like somebody's grandma lives here," Elliot chuckled. "That's probably true." Lorraine raised an eyebrow but said nothing. She was still sizing him up, watching every move, measuring every word. Anna, on the other hand, had already drifted toward a booth by the window, her bear Marvin tucked under one arm, the cookie wrapper still in her coat pocket. A tired waitress in her 50s approached, wiping her hands on her apron. "Evenin'? Table for 3? Elliot nodded. "Please. And could we get something warm for the little one?" "She's been out in the cold." The waitress glanced down at Anna and smiled gently. "We've got grilled cheese and tomato soup. You like that, sugar?" Anna nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, ma'am." The waitress leaned in. "And Marvin? He eaten too?" Anna grinned. "He mostly just watches." Once seated, Elliot took off his overcoat, folding it carefully and setting it beside him. He rarely touched cloth napkins, but tonight, he used one to gently clean the soot from Anna's fingers. She didn't pull away. Lorraine sat across from him, arms crossed, chin lifted. Her voice was steady. "I appreciate what you did back there. But I have to ask why." Elliot looked at her. "Why did I stop? Why are you still here?" He exhaled. "Because she reminded me of someone I lost. And because she's a child. No one should be out there like that." Lorraine nodded, eyes not softening just yet. "You see a lot of pain in this city, Mr. Carter. Most people drive right past it." "I know, I used to." "W." The waitress returned with the soup and grilled cheese, along with a plate of fried chicken and mashed potatoes for Lorraine, and a burger for Elliot. Anna took her first bite of soup and sighed audibly. "This tastes like heat." Elliot smiled. "That's a good thing?" She nodded, mouth full. "The kind that doesn't burn." Lorraine picked at her chicken, but her eyes were still on Elliot. "You married?" "Not anymore." "Kids?" He looked down at his hands. "One, a daughter. She passed away 5 years ago." There it was, a pause in the air, thick and respectful. Lorraine didn't pry. Anna reached for his hand under the table. Elliot let her. "I'm sorry," she said simply. "Me too," Elliot replied. They ate in silence for a while. The only sounds were the clink of silverware and the soft hum of a Sam Cooke song playing from a dusty jukebox in the corner. After the meal, Anna asked the waitress, "Do you have any crayons?" The woman returned with a handful and a kids' menu that doubled as a coloring page. Anna started to draw. Elliot watched as she sketched what looked like a house crooked roof, big window, a chimney with curly smoke. He asked, "Is that your house?" Anna shook her head. "Number, that's a house I haven't been to yet." Lorraine leaned in. "You dreamin', baby?" "Not dreaming," Anna said firmly. "Waiting." Zer. Elliot glanced at his watch. It was past midnight. The streets outside were coated with frost. "I'd like to get you both a hotel for the night," he said gently. "Someplace safe, clean. You'll have your own room. Breakfast in the morning." Lorraine hesitated. "That's generous, but we don't take charity." "It's not charity," Elliot replied. "It's dignity. And everyone deserves that, even if just for one night." Anna looked up. "Will it have a tub? A real one?" "Yes," Elliot smiled. "With hot water." She leaned into Lorraine, pleading without words. Lorraine finally exhaled. "All right. Just one night." After paying the bill, Elliot walked them out to the waiting car. Ruth had arrived again, sensing, somehow, that he wouldn't be done quickly. She didn't ask questions. The hotel he chose wasn't flashy, just a quiet boutique place near the lake. Elliot personally checked them in, making sure there were 2 beds, clean clothes, and a small stuffed animal waiting for Anna just in case Marvin needed a friend. In the elevator, Anna clutched his hand again. "Elliot?" "Yes? Can I ask you something kind of weird?" "Of course. If your heart is broken, how come you still do nice things?" He paused. "Because sometimes, doing nice things is the only way to keep it from breaking more." Anna nodded like that made perfect sense. Outside their hotel room, Lorraine turned to him. "You've done more in 2 hours than most do in a lifetime. I won't forget that." "I didn't do it to be remembered," he said. "You didn't do it like a man trying to fix something either." He smiled. "Maybe I was just trying to feel human again." She nodded. "Well, for what it's worth, you do." Anna ran back out just before the door closed. "Elliot?" "Yes." She handed him the drawing she'd made at the diner. The crooked house, the chimney. 3 stick figures, 1 tall, 1 medium, 1 very small holding hands in front of it. "That's you," she pointed. "And Auntie, and me. And Marvin's in the window." Elliot looked at it, then at her. "I'm gonna keep this," he said. "You better," she smiled. "It's the only copy." That night, as Elliot rode home in silence, the drawing on his lap, the snow finally began to fall soft, quiet, forgiving, and for the first time in years, he didn't feel the weight of being alone. Not entirely. Not anymore. Morning broke with a soft golden hue over Lake Michigan, casting long shadows through the floor to ceiling windows of Elliot Carter's penthouse. He had slept little. The child's drawing lay on the kitchen island, carefully flattened under a crystal paperweight, its simplicity more grounding than any business report he'd read in years. He sat with black coffee untouched, eyes scanning headlines out of habit, though his mind was still in the diner, still in that hotel hallway where a little girl named Anna had offered him a version of home in crayons and stick figures. Then the phone rang. It was Ruth. "You're going to want to see this," she said without preamble. "Turn on WCLN local news." Elliot grabbed the remote. The screen flickered, then loaded into a blurry cell phone video. There he was standing next to Anna at the park, handing her the cookie. The headline, "Mysterious Child Found in Park. Billionaire Elliot Carter Intervenes." He muted the television. "Damn it," he muttered. Ruth, still on the line, added, "It's gone viral. Someone saw you at the diner, too." Social media's spinning it into everything from PR stunt to secret adoption rumors. Elliot's face hardened. "What about Anna and Lorraine?" "I had them moved to a more secure floor, under a different name. The manager at the hotel's discreet, but this won't stay quiet for long. Can you get them to my lawyer?" "Just to cover protections. I don't want CPS or the press touching that child. I'm already on it." Elliot hung up. He stared at the television screen again. Anna's face was frozen, mid-smile, innocent and exhausted. And suddenly, his private act of kindness had become a headline. He grabbed his coat and was out the door within minutes. At the hotel, Lorraine opened the door with a wary look. "I saw it," she said, arms folded. "You didn't tell us someone was filming." "I didn't know," Elliot replied. "But I'm sorry. You didn't sign up for this attention." Anna peeked from behind Lorraine, already dressed in a clean hoodie and leggings the hotel had provided. Her hair had been brushed, tied up in 2 puffballs on either side of her head. "You okay, Peanut?" Elliot asked. She nodded. "I heard my name on the television. I thought I was in trouble." "You're not," he said quickly. "You're never in trouble for surviving." Lorraine stepped aside to let him in. "We need to talk, Mr. Carter." They sat across from each other, Anna curled up on the edge of the bed with Marvin tucked under her arm, absently watching cartoons on mute. "I've had child services show up at my door before," Lorraine said. "They don't knock. They judge. Fast. They won't this time. My legal team is on it." "I appreciate that," she said, eyes locked on his. "But that little girl is more than a photo op. You need to understand something. Anna didn't just lose a house. She lost trust." Elliot nodded slowly. "I know. I'm not here to be a savior." "Good," she said, leaning forward. "Because what she needs isn't a savior. She needs someone who won't vanish after the news cycle ends." He didn't flinch. "I don't vanish." Ugh. A long pause settled between them. Then Anna spoke without looking away from the screen. "Can I still draw you things even if people on the news say stuff?" Elliot turned to her. "Absolutely. No one tells me who I care about." She smiled faintly and returned to her cartoons. Lorraine softened, just slightly. "I'll keep her today," she said. "She needs normal. Pancakes, maybe a walk by the water. But tonight, if the news keeps poking around, we might not be safe here." I have a safe house," Elliot offered. "Private, no staff, just a cabin upstate. We can move you tonight if needed." Lorraine hesitated. "And, after that?" "That depends on you," Elliot said honestly. "But I won't leave her out there again. Not now." By late afternoon, the story had ballooned. Television crews waited outside the diner. Bloggers speculated whether Elliot had finally found his cause. Some called it inspiring, others called it suspicious, and by evening, Lorraine agreed it was time to go. The ride upstate was quiet. Anna fell asleep in the back seat within minutes. Marvin nestled against her cheek. Elliot drove this time, insisting on it. Ruth stayed behind to manage the press. The road north was long, framed by leafless trees and wide empty stretches of winter-faded farmland. "You didn't have to do this," Lorraine said quietly, watching the trees pass. "I know. So why are you?" Elliot kept his eyes on the road. "Because she reminds me of someone I lost. And because I think, maybe I've been lost, too." The silence between them wasn't cold anymore. It was mutual understanding. At the cabin, they settled in. No cameras, no reporters. Just the sound of wind through trees and the creak of old floorboards. That night, as Elliot stood in the doorway of the guest bedroom, watching Anna sleep under a quilt, Lorraine appeared beside him. "She hasn't slept this peacefully in months." Elliot nodded. "Neither have I." Then Lorraine asked a question he hadn't expected. "If you could do one thing for her, only one, what would it be?" He took a deep breath. "I'd make sure she never has to feel forgotten again." The door clicked softly shut behind them. Outside, the stars began to break through the clouds, one by one. And inside, something shifted, not just for Anna, but for Elliot Carter too. Because this wasn't about headlines anymore. This was about healing. Quietly, gently, without permission from the world. Morning at the cabin brought the kind of stillness you couldn't buy in the city. No car horns, no buzzing phones, no suits barking orders through Bluetooth earpieces. Just the groan of wooden beams as they adjusted to the cold and the occasional chirp of a defiant winter bird outside. Elliot Carter stood in the kitchen, pouring pancake batter into a cast-iron skillet. He was barefoot, wearing an old Cornell sweatshirt that hadn't seen daylight in a decade. The place smelled like maple syrup and coffee, not espresso, coffee. From an old-school drip pot Lorraine had found in the back of the cabinet, Anna was at the table, humming quietly as she colored on the back of Elliot's business presentation papers. Marvin sat propped beside her, now with a tiny scarf Lorraine had knitted overnight from a leftover ball of yarn she'd pulled from her handbag. It was pink and uneven, but Anna called it perfect. "You cook?" Lorraine asked, leaning against the doorframe, her arms crossed but with a softer look than usual. I used to, Elliot said, before life got too loud. She nodded. You're better than the last guy who tried to impress me. He almost burned water. Anna giggled from the table. After breakfast, Lorraine took Anna outside for a short walk near the frozen lake, bundled tight in layers Elliot had delivered from a nearby outlet. He stayed behind, using the quiet to catch up on his inbox. But no matter how many emails he opened, his eyes kept drifting to the crayon drawings scattered on the counter houses, trees, a son wearing sunglasses, and in nearly every sketch, 3 people, always together. A ping on his phone jolted him out of his thoughts. Text from Ruth. We've got a problem. Someone leaked the hotel name to a tabloid. They're digging for Anna's background. Elliot stared at the screen, jaw tightening. It was only a matter of time before curiosity turned invasive. Before the wrong person started asking questions. Before Anna stopped being a child and started being a story again. He called Ruth immediately. How bad is it? Bad enough. There's a freelance reporter poking around the fire department records. I think they're trying to connect her to the house fire. Can they? Maybe. If they dig deep enough. Elliot took a long breath. Buy time. Delay anything they find. And prepare the legal team. I won't let them drag her through headlines. Understood. When Lorraine and Anna returned from their walk, Elliot met them on the porch. Can we talk? He asked Lorraine privately. Anna, still bundled in a puffy blue coat, was too busy stacking sticks and pebbles into what she called Marvin's fort to notice. Inside, Elliot closed the door behind them. There's pressure mounting, he began. The media is chasing the story hard, and now someone's connecting dots about the fire. Lorraine exhaled, tension returning to her shoulders. That was bound to happen. I can protect her from the press. But if they start painting her as a mystery child, they'll come with court orders, custody battles, speculation, and CPS, Lorraine added grimly. I'm prepared to fight that, Elliot said. I have lawyers, money, resources. But do you have trust? She asked, her eyes steady. He didn't answer immediately, Lorraine continued. I've known Anna since she was born. Her mama and I worked in the same nursing home before the fire. I promised I'd watch out for her if anything ever happened. But I'm not blood, which means legally I'm nobody. You're not nobody, Elliot said. The state says otherwise. A pause passed between them. Then Elliot made the offer that had been forming in his mind since the moment he saw Anna clutching Marvin near that trash bin. What if we gave her something more permanent? Lorraine arched a brow. What do you mean? I mean, guardianship. Not just safety. A future. Are you saying you want to adopt her? He shook his head. Not yet. Not without knowing what she needs. But maybe the 3 of us together we figure it out. I can provide stability. Schooling. Healthcare. And you. You're the history she needs. The anchor. She studied him carefully. You don't take on a child to feel better about your losses. I'm not, Elliot said, voice low. I'm doing it because when I look at her, I see someone who could be extraordinary if the world would just stop trying to crush her. A silence hung, not uncomfortable, just heavy with truth. Finally, Lorraine said, she's not a project. She's a person. I know. Then let's see what kind of person you are when the headlines fade. They returned outside, where Anna was now lecturing Marvin about structural stability. Her stick-and-rock fort had collapsed. I told you the roof needed more twigs, she muttered, half to herself. Elliot crouched beside her. Looks like your engineer has opinions. Anna looked up at him with a grin. He says we need a permit. He smiled. Smart bear. Do we have to go back to the city? She asked suddenly. Not today, he said. Why? Because here the air smells like trees, not smoke. That night, Elliot didn't return to his penthouse. He stayed at the cabin, sleeping on the old leather couch in the den. Marvin sat on the side table, watching over the room like a sentry. In the dark, as the fire crackled low, Elliot thought about permanence, what it meant to show up for someone not just once, but every day after. And for the first time in a very long time, he didn't feel like a man avoiding the world. He felt like a man choosing where he truly belonged. The cabin had settled into a soft rhythm. Morning pancakes, walks through frosted trails, Quiet nights beside the fire. It was a fragile peace, like frost on a window pane, delicate, beautiful, but always at risk of melting under pressure. By the fourth day, Anna had started sleeping through the night. No more cries, no tossing. She'd stopped flinching at sudden sounds. Her coloring pages now featured flowers and sunshine instead of smudged houses on fire. Elliot noticed every change like a man watching spring break through a hard winter. But he also knew what peace rarely lasted, especially when the world outside had questions. That world knocked loudly on the cabin door just after breakfast. Elliot opened it to find two figures. A woman in a dark blue coat with a clipboard tucked under one arm, and a man in khakis, polite but cautious, flashing a badge as quickly as he tucked it back. "Good morning, Mr. Carter. I'm Wendy Franks, Child Protective Services. This is Officer Dean with the local precinct. We received a welfare concern filed anonymously regarding a minor under your supervision. May we come in?" Elliot's scoot tightened. "Is this about Anna?" "It's a standard inquiry," Wendy said, her voice soft, practiced. "We just want to ensure the child's safety." Lorraine appeared in the hallway behind him. "She's safe. Safer than she's been in months." Officer Dean offered a tight smile. "We just need to verify that in person." Elliot stepped aside. "Come in." Anna was in the living room, sitting cross-legged on the floor building a castle from dominoes and crackers. Marvin wore a crown made of tin foil. When she saw the strangers, her eyes flickered not fear exactly, but a kind of resignation. Wendy crouched near her. "Hi there, Anna. My name's Wendy. Can I sit with you a moment?" Anna looked at Elliot. He gave a small nod. She turned back and whispered, "Okay." The CPS worker sat carefully, hands folded. "That's quite the castle. Who lives there?" "Marvin," Anna replied, "and a queen bear I haven't met yet." Wendy smiled. "Do you like it here?" Anna nodded. "Has anyone here hurt you?" "No, ma'am." "Do you feel safe?" "Yes, ma'am." "Can I ask what happened to your family, Anna?" Anna hesitated. Then, slowly, she recited the same story Elliot had first heard in the park. The fire, the night she ran, the shelter, the noise, the cold. Wendy's expression never changed, but Elliot noticed her scribbling notes furiously. "And since you've been with Mr. Carter and Miss Lorraine?" Anna looked up. "I have pancakes. I have a warm bed. Marvin says we're not ghosts anymore." Officer Dean blinked. "Ghosts?" Anna looked at him and said, "When people look through you like you're not there, you start to think maybe you died and just forgot." No one in the room spoke for a moment. Wendy finally stood. "Thank you, Anna. You've been very brave." Elliot led them to the kitchen while Lorraine stayed with Anna. Wendy's tone shifted the moment they were out of earshot. "Mr. Carter, while it's clear the child is not in immediate danger, we have a process to follow. Her case is officially under review. You may receive a formal custody inquiry." Elliot's jaw tightened. "She's finally healing. Don't pull her back into bureaucracy." "I don't want to," Wendy said genuinely, "but there are legal guardianship questions, and the shelter reported her as missing. They'll want her back in the system while it's sorted. She's not property to be returned. She's a ward of the state until otherwise assigned. Then I want to become that assignment." Wendy blinked. "Mr. Carter, that's a significant decision. I'm aware. I'm not asking for applause. I'm asking for what's best for her." Officer Dean, who had remained quiet, spoke up. "If I may, sir, not many men in your position would do what you've done. But this road won't be easy. CPS isn't just looking at your intentions, they'll look at your past." Elliot met his gaze, then let them. After they left, Elliot sat at the kitchen table, staring at a forgotten mug of coffee, steam long gone. Lorraine came in quietly. "They're going to try to take her back, aren't they?" "They'll try. She won't survive another shelter. I won't let her." There was a pause. "You meant what you said? About becoming her guardian?" Elliot looked up. "With every cell in my body, she'll need more than a guardian. She'll need someone who fights for her, even when it's messy. I know. She'll test you. She already has." Lorraine gave a thin smile. "You passed." That night, Elliot called Ruth. I want to file for emergency guardianship. Pull every legal thread we can. If it costs millions, I'll pay it." Ruth didn't hesitate. "It's already in motion." Well, when he hung up, Elliot stood outside the cabin, looking up at a sky full of cold stars. For years, he had floated through life rich, respected, but empty in ways no one could see. Now, in a quiet cabin filled with coloring books and bear forts, he was fighting for something again. For someone, and that made all the difference. Inside, Anna peeked through the window and waved. He waved back, and in that simple gesture, Elliot Carter knew. This wasn't just charity, this was purpose, and he would protect it at all costs. 3 days after the CPS visit, Elliot Carter stood in a polished office building in downtown Chicago, staring at a stack of legal documents nearly 2 inches thick. His lawyer, Diane Harlow, a sharp African-American woman in her 60s with a voice like velvet and a gaze like steel, sat across from him with reading glasses perched at the end of her nose. "This is not going to be smooth sailing," she said flatly. "Guardianship over a child with no living legal relatives and a record of displacement? CPS is going to put you under a microscope." "I'm ready," Elliot replied. "I'm not sure you are," she countered, flipping a page. "They'll review your past, your divorce, your daughter's accident. Even the NDAs you've settled quietly with ex-employees." He looked her in the eye. "I know what they'll find. And I'm not ashamed." She leaned back in her chair. "You should be proud of the way you've turned. But the state doesn't care about redemption arcs. They care about checklists. Then we check every box." Diane studied him for a beat. "You're really doing this?" "I'm not doing this because I want a child. I'm doing this because she's already mine in every way that matters." She gave a small nod. "That's the only right answer." Outside the building, Ruth waited in the car, laptop open, typing furiously. As Elliot climbed in, she didn't look up. "So far, media coverage is mixed," she said. "The tabloids are trying to dig up anything that smells like scandal. But your philanthropy history and the footage of Anna building that cookie fort have painted you like the damn Mr. Rogers of billionaires." Elliot smirked. "I've been called worse, but we have a new problem," Ruth continued, pulling up a page on her screen. "Someone's claiming they have a blood connection to Anna." He stiffened. "Who?" "Name's Calvin Rusk. Says he's a second cousin on her mother's side. He just filed a formal request with CPS for temporary custody." Elliot's expression darkened. "Where the hell was he when she was sleeping next to a trash can?" "Exactly. He has no legal history with the family. No photos. No DNA proof. But he's got just enough of a backstory that the system might entertain it." "What does he want?" Ruth paused. "I'd guess money. Then we shut it down. Fast." "No." That evening, Elliot returned to the cabin with takeout in hand and tension in his shoulders. Lorraine was helping Anna practice tying her shoelaces by the fireplace. Marvin sat nearby with one of his new ears crudely stitched back on. Lorraine had been teaching Anna how to sew. When Anna saw Elliot, she ran to the door. "You were gone forever." "I know," he smiled, kneeling to meet her, "but I brought dinner and a surprise." He handed her a small, wrapped box. She tore it open to reveal a tiny locket, a silver heart engraved with her initials. And inside, a photo of her parents on one side, and on the other, a drawing she'd made of Elliot, Lorraine, and herself. Her voice dropped. "You kept my drawing?" "Of course," he said. "It reminded me of what matters." She hugged him tightly, and something in his chest cracked wide open again. The kind of breaking that comes before healing. Later that night, after Anna had fallen asleep with Marvin in her arms, Elliot and Lorraine sat by the fire, each holding a glass of tea. "She's changing," Lorraine said softly. "Every day, a little more of that light comes back. She's stronger than any child should have to be." Lorraine sipped her tea. "You've changed too, Elliot." He looked at her. "How so?" "You used to carry yourself like a man with too much and not enough at the same time. And now? Now you look like a man who finally knows what he's fighting for." Elliot didn't speak. He just stared into the fire until it flickered low. The next morning brought a knock at the cabin door. Again, Elliot opened it, expecting another CPS visit or worse. Instead, it was a woman in her 40s, professionally dressed, her face tired but kind. "I'm Brenda LaSalle," she said, "private investigator. I was hired to look into the claim by Calvin Rusk." Elliot tensed. "By who?" "Your lawyer, Diane Harlow. She doesn't wait for the courts to do the right thing. She makes sure they're forced to." He stepped aside to let her in. At the kitchen table, she opened a manila folder and spread out documents: Calvin Rusk's criminal history, past fraud cases, fake IDs, and a list of 5 other children he'd previously tried to claim guardianship over, each case quietly dropped after legal action or settlements. "He's a predator," Brenda said. "Targets vulnerable kids with inheritance or potential media value." "Your story with Anna?" "Perfect bait." Lorraine's face darkened. "So this was never about family?" Brenda shook her head. "He's never even met her." Elliot leaned back, hands steepled under his chin. "We go public." Brenda frowned. "That could backfire." "I don't care," Elliot said. "We expose him before he gets anywhere near her name again." Brenda nodded. "I'll prepare a full report, and for what it's worth, I think you're doing something rare here." As she left, Elliot turned to Lorraine. "We're not just protecting her. We're rewriting what protection even looks like." That night, he tucked Anna in and sat beside her bed a moment longer than usual. "Elliot," she whispered. "Yes? When people say I'm lucky to have you, does that mean you chose me?" He brushed a loose curl from her forehead. "No, sweetheart. It means we chose each other." And as she drifted into sleep, clutching Marvin and the locket, Elliot knew the fight was far from over. But for the first time, he wasn't afraid of the battle ahead, because now he had something worth everything he had left. The sky over Chicago was a bruised gray when Elliot Carter stepped out of the SUV, the cold wind snapping at his coat collar. He stood in front of what remained of the house where Anna's life had changed forever, or, more precisely, what used to be a house, now only the warped skeleton of charred timbers and collapsed siding. The city had fenced it off, posted a condemned sign, and forgotten it. But Elliot hadn't, and neither had Anna. He wasn't alone. Lorraine stood beside him, hands deep in her coat pockets. Her breath hung in the air like ghosts. "She used to sit right there," Lorraine said, nodding toward a cracked concrete step. "Every day after school, waiting for her mom to get home from work, sometimes with a juice box and a book too big for her hands." Elliot nodded, eyes fixed on the blackened structure. "What caused it?" They said electrical, old wiring. Probably sparked behind the wall near the kitchen. Nobody checked. Nobody cared. "And the fire department? They came," she said bitterly. "But too late. In this neighborhood, late's the norm." He didn't respond. He didn't need to. The silence between them said everything. From his coat pocket, Elliot pulled out a folded envelope and handed it to Lorraine. "What's this?" she asked. "An official request to open a private investigation into the fire. I've already hired a forensic arson expert. If the system failed her once, I want it on record. Anna deserves that." Lorraine opened the envelope, skimmed the first lines, then looked up. "You really don't let anything go, do you? Not when it matters." As they turned to leave, Elliot paused and walked back to the front of the gate. He knelt, picked up a small piece of singed wood, and slipped it into his coat pocket. Not as a souvenir, but as evidence, not just of what had burned, but of what he intended to rebuild. Back at the cabin, Anna was playing in the den with a wooden train set Elliot had ordered from a local toy maker. Her laughter echoed softly, untouched by the heaviness the adults carried. Marvin wore a tiny conductor's hat. Lorraine joined her, giving Elliot a chance to slip into the study and take a call from Ruth. "We traced more on Calvin Rusk," she said. "He's connected to a loosely organized group targeting foster system kids. It's darker than we thought. Can we tie him to anyone else? Maybe, but the DA wants hard proof before they act. Until then, CPS still considers him a potential kinship candidate." Elliot's voice dropped. They'd rather give her to a con artist with a fabricated bloodline than to someone who's proven they'll love her. "It's not about love," Ruth said, her voice heavy. "It's about procedure." "Then we change the procedure." He hung up and stared at the legal forms on his desk. petitions, statements, affidavits. All of them felt cold and lifeless compared to the warmth in Anna's smile. That evening, as snow began to fall in soft flurries outside, Elliot called Anna to the kitchen. "I want to show you something," he said, placing the charred piece of wood from her old home on the table. Anna stared at it for a long time. "Is that?" "Yes," he said gently. "I visited the place today. It's gone, Anna, but the memory doesn't have to hurt forever." She didn't cry. Not this time. Instead, she reached for his hand and said, "I thought I'd never see it again." "I thought maybe you shouldn't have to," Elliot admitted. "But now I think maybe facing it means you can leave it behind." She nodded, thoughtful. "Can we keep it?" "We can, but only if you're ready." "I'm ready," she said. Elliot pulled out a small glass shadow box. "Let's turn it into something else. Something that reminds us not of what was lost, but what survived." Together, they placed the charred wood into the box. Anna added a photo of her mother, the drawing of their stick-figure house, and a single dried flower she'd picked on one of their walks. A memory, reshaped. Lorraine watched from the doorway, her throat tight. "You're building more than a case for custody," she said later that night as she and Elliot sipped tea by the fire. "You're building her a new foundation. She deserves one that doesn't burn," Elliot replied. Lorraine looked at him for a long moment. "I think you're finally starting to understand what being a parent feels like." "I think I'm starting to remember," he said quietly. They sat in silence after that, listening to the logs crackle, the wind whistle, and the soft hum of Anna's lullaby coming from down the hall. And in the glow of firelight, beneath a roof no court could threaten and behind walls no flame could touch, Elliot Carter knew this chapter of his life would never be printed in Forbes or Business Weekly, but it would be written indelibly, irrevocably into the heart of a child who had been left out in the cold. And finally found her way home. The morning light slid through the tall pines outside the cabin, casting long, peaceful shadows across the hardwood floors. Anna was already awake, her small frame curled up on the living room rug with Marvin, sorting through a pile of postcards Elliot had pulled from an old box in the study, souvenirs from places he'd visited but never truly seen. Paris, Kyoto, Namibia, New York, always in first class, always for business, always alone. Now, Anna was turning them into stories. "This one," she said, pointing to a postcard of the Eiffel Tower, "is where Marvin wants to eat spaghetti with no sauce, just cheese." "No? Very French of him." Elliot smiled as he walked into the room with 2 mugs of hot cocoa. Lorraine followed a moment later, rubbing her temples. "You're not gonna like what I found," she said, handing Elliot her phone. He took it, brow furrowing as he read the headline from a local gossip blog. "Calvin Rusk speaks. I deserve a chance to raise my own blood." Beneath it was a photo of Calvin standing in front of a rundown storefront, holding a badly framed portrait of a woman who, according to the caption, was Anna's late aunt. "He's leaning hard into the bloodline angle," Lorraine muttered. "Even gave an exclusive to the Tribune," Elliot said, his jaw tightening. "Claims he has letters from Anna's mother, asking him to take care of her if anything happened." Lorraine scoffed. "Letters that miraculously appear after the story goes viral." Elliot nodded grimly. "We need to discredit him. Now." 2 hours later, Elliot sat in Diane Harlow's office, flipping through copies of the so-called letters. They were sloppy facsimiles, typed in uneven font, and signed with a looping scrawl that didn't match the signature on Anna's birth certificate, something Diane had wisely obtained weeks ago. "They're forgeries," Diane confirmed, tapping the paper with her pen. "I'll get a handwriting analyst to confirm, but any judge worth their salt will see through this." "Then why hasn't CPS dropped the case?" Elliot asked. "Because optics matter more than facts," she said, her voice flat. "Rusk's team is arguing that you wealthy, powerful are steamrolling a poor but genuine relative out of a child's life." He slammed the folder shut. "They're trying to turn this into a class war." "They always do," she replied. "But class doesn't win in court, evidence does, and we're about to get it." She reached into her desk drawer and pulled out a manila envelope. Background report on Calvin Rusk's most recent known associate. Ex-con named Darren Fields. Guess who notarized those fake letters? Elliot opened the report. The notary stamp was barely visible, but the name matched. Darren's been convicted twice for document tampering. Diane said. Rusk knew what he was doing. Then we go public, Elliot said. Let people see the truth. Not yet, she cautioned. You're building a case for guardianship, not a PR campaign. Any move that looks retaliatory could damage your credibility. He sighed, rubbing his temples. Then what do I do? Go home, she said. Be visible but quiet. Let us do the heavy lifting. Back at the cabin, Anna was painting a cardboard box she'd converted into a bare spaceship. Marvin was buckled in with twine, and a plastic spoon served as the control stick. Lorraine met Elliot at the door. How bad? Not good. But we've got proof. It's just a matter of time. She nodded. Anna asked today if you were going to leave. He stopped mid-step. What did you say? I told her no, but she still doesn't believe it. Elliot went quiet. Then, after a moment, walked to Anna's spaceship and knelt down. Captain Marvin, he said solemnly. I hear this mission requires backup. Anna looked up, paintbrush in hand. Only if you promise not to leave the ship halfway through. He didn't smile. I promise, he said, voice steady. I'm not going anywhere, not for this mission, not ever. She handed him a paper badge. Then you're co-captain. Not. As they launched Marvin's spaceship into orbit, which included scooting the box around the living room and yelling, blast off. Lorraine watched them with a quiet awe. The cabin had changed. The air felt different. It wasn't just a place to hide anymore. It was becoming something far rarer, a beginning. That night, as Anna slept, Elliot stood on the porch with Lorraine, both of them wrapped in old quilts. You were made for this, she said, not quite looking at him. I wasn't, Elliot replied. But I'm becoming it. A beat of silence. Her mother, Lorraine began. She once told me Anna would either break the world or rebuild it. No in between. She's already rebuilding mine, Elliot said. Lorraine glanced at him. Then, maybe it's your job to make sure the world doesn't break her first. Inside, Anna stirred, murmuring something in her sleep. Elliot stepped back in, gently covering her with the blanket. On the table beside her bed sat the shadow box, the charred wood, the dried flower, the drawing, the locket. Memories, yes, but not of tragedy, of survival, of resilience, of the moment the world started to turn. Not against her, but with her. And though the legal battles ahead would test every ounce of resolve Elliot Carter had, one truth burned brighter than any headline or courtroom drama. He was no longer a man running from pain. He was a father learning to fight for hope. The courthouse stood tall and indifferent beneath a slate-colored sky. Its stone walls worn by decades of weather and justice, some fair, some not. Elliot Carter stepped through its glass doors with measured calm, but beneath the tailored coat and crisp white shirt, his chest thudded with a storm of emotion. Beside him walked Lorraine, her jaw clenched, eyes sharp. And just behind them, holding tightly to Lorraine's gloved hand, was Anna. She wore a navy blue dress, wool tights, and the tiny silver locket Elliot had given her pressed close to her heart like a shield. Marvin was tucked into her backpack, only his fuzzy ears sticking out, as if he too wanted to be part of the decision that could change everything. As they entered the juvenile court waiting area, the atmosphere thickened. Children in mismatched coats, social workers hunched over files, nervous parents pacing. In one corner sat Calvin Rusk. He was dressed in a borrowed suit that didn't quite fit, leaning back in his chair with the smug confidence of a man who believed the system could still be gamed. When he saw Anna, he gave a small wave and a crooked smile. Anna turned her face into Lorraine's coat. Elliot's hands clenched into fists. Before he could move, a firm voice called out, "Mr. Carter?" Diane Harlow approached, court file in hand. Judge Reynolds will hear the case in chambers, private hearing, no press, just us, CPS, and Rusk. Elliot nodded. How's the judge? Fair, by reputation, but conservative. He won't be swayed by emotion alone. That's why I brought this. She lifted the thick folder, documentation, statements, forensics, even a notarized confession from Rusk's associate admitting the forged letters. That's our sword, Elliot muttered. And Anna? Diane asked, glancing at the girl. She's ready, Lorraine said firmly. She shouldn't have to be, Elliot added. But she is. The hearing chamber was warm but somber, the kind of room built to flatten emotion beneath legal process. Judge Reynolds, a man in his early 60s with silver hair and glasses perched low on his nose, sat behind a large oak desk, flipping through pages with slow deliberation. "I've reviewed the initial filings," he began. "Before we proceed, I want to hear directly from both parties. Mr. Rusk, you'll speak first." Calvin stood. "Your Honor, I may not have wealth or lawyers, but I'm family, blood. Anna's mother was my cousin. She wrote to me before she passed. She wanted Anna with kin, not strangers." Diane stood smoothly. "Your Honor, with your permission." "Not yet," the judge said. "Mr. Carter, your statement?" Elliot rose. His voice was calm but resolute. "I won't pretend I've known Anna long, but I've seen more courage in her in a few weeks than I've seen in most adults in my life. She's not with me because I rescued her. She's with me because she belongs somewhere safe, somewhere permanent. I can give her that, not just a roof, but a future." The judge studied him. "And your relationship to the child?" "I'm not family by blood, Your Honor, but I am by choice." A pause hung in the air. "Very well," the judge said. "Let's proceed to evidence." Diane stepped forward and began laying out her case piece by piece. The fraudulent letters, the notary's confession, the record of prior custody attempts by Calvin Rusk, the criminal background, and finally testimonies from the shelter staff, Anna's school counselor, and Lorraine herself. Each statement built a fortress around Anna, brick by brick. Rusk's lawyer attempted to object, but with every rebuttal, Diane calmly sliced through it. And when the judge asked Anna if she wanted to speak, a hush fell over the room. Anna stepped forward. She was small, almost swallowed by the chair, but her voice soft as it was carried weight. "My mom died in the fire," she said. "I was scared. I ran. I didn't know who to trust." She looked at Elliot. "Mr. Carter gave me cookies and didn't ask anything back. He let me talk, then he listened." Then she looked at the judge. "I don't know that man," she pointed at Calvin, "but he talks like he owns me. Nobody should talk like that." The judge blinked slowly. "And how do you feel with Mr. Carter and Miss Lorraine?" Anna took a breath. "Safe, like I'm not invisible anymore." That silence afterward was louder than anything else that could have been said. An hour later, back in the waiting area, the judge returned with a ruling. Everyone stood. "In consideration of the child's welfare, submitted evidence, and testimony provided in this chamber, this court denies Mr. Rusk's custody petition on grounds of fraud and endangerment risk." Calvin's face drained. The judge turned to Elliot. "Mr. Carter, pending a final home evaluation and continued background checks, you are hereby granted temporary guardianship of Anna Thomas, with all accompanying rights." Anna's face lit up, but she didn't move, not until Elliot knelt and opened his arms. Then she ran, straight into him. Calvin Rusk was escorted out quietly by court security. No cameras, no interviews, just silence and a door closing behind a man who tried to turn a child into leverage and lost. That night, back at the cabin, a fire crackled in the hearth, and the smell of fresh-baked cookies filled the air. Lorraine hummed in the kitchen, and Elliot sat on the floor, helping Anna set up a new shelf for her drawings and photos. At the top, in the center, they placed the shadow box. "Do you think the judge liked me?" Anna asked, rubbing Marvin's stitched ear. "I think he saw you," Elliot said. "That's more important." Anna leaned into him. "Can I call this home now?" Elliot looked around the fire. The laughter, the safety. "You can call it whatever you want, kiddo," he whispered. "But yes, it's home." The snow had begun to melt by late March, leaving behind patches of damp earth and muddy trails that curled behind the cabin like forgotten paths. Spring came slowly in this part of Illinois, sneaking up rather than bursting in. But for Elliot Carter, each droplet that slid from the pine needles outside his window felt like a soft reminder. Life was beginning again, not just in the world, but in his home. Anna was adapting beautifully. She was sleeping through the night, eating better, and laughing louder. She had started calling Lorraine Auntie L, and Elliot, more often now, simply Dad. It was tentative at first, shy, like a note played on a piano for the first time. But when she said it, Elliot would freeze for just a moment, as if his soul needed time to catch up. Still, peace was not permanent. Not in a life that had known loss so young. That morning, Elliot found Anna standing at the edge of the trail behind the cabin, holding a letter. "Where did you get that?" he asked, already dreading the answer. Anna looked up, eyes troubled. "Mailbox. It doesn't have a stamp." Elliot knelt beside her, gently taking the envelope. The handwriting was messy and in all caps. The return address was blank. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "You think you won. She ain't yours. She never will be." No name, no signature, just the bitterness of someone who had been denied control and couldn't accept it. Elliot's hand clenched. He scanned the tree line, saw nothing but woods and wind. "Did you see anyone?" he asked, trying to sound calm. Anna shook her head. "Number, I just thought it was a letter from Mom. Sometimes I pretend she still sends them." That gutted him more than the threat. He tucked the letter in his coat. "Come inside, sweetheart." Back in the cabin, he handed the envelope to Lorraine, who immediately called Diane. "Don't downplay this," Lorraine said to her over the phone. "Someone's trespassing and targeting a child." Diane agreed. "File a police report. I'll push to get a protection order added to the guardianship terms." Elliot looked at Anna, who sat silently at the kitchen table, staring at her cocoa. She whispered, "Is he coming back?" "No," Elliot said, kneeling so they were eye level. "Whoever left that is a coward, and we don't let cowards win." She nodded but didn't look convinced. Later that night, as Anna slept, Elliot sat alone on the porch, his shotgun beside him, not out of paranoia, but principle. He wasn't the kind of man who turned to violence, but he was the kind of man who would sit awake all night to protect what mattered. Lorraine stepped out with 2 cups of coffee. "Third night in a row," she said, handing him one. "I'm fine," he replied. She isn't. She hasn't picked up Marvin all day." That alarmed him. Marvin was more than a toy. Marvin was Anna's history, her mirror, her safety net. "She'll be okay," he said, trying to believe it. "We just need to keep showing her that this place us we're solid." Lorraine sipped her coffee. "What if the letter wasn't from Rusk?" Elliot raised an eyebrow. "Then who?" She shrugged. "Someone else from her past? Her mother's side? People talk, especially in small towns. Maybe someone doesn't like that a rich white man is raising a black girl like she's his own." He didn't flinch. "Then they'll learn the hard way." The next morning, Elliot took Anna to the community center in town. He hadn't planned on enrolling her in anything yet too soon. Too many unknowns, but something in him said now was the time to show her the world could still be gentle. Inside the center, kids her age danced around a circle in an art class, slapping paint on paper and squealing with joy. Anna hovered near the door, uncertain. A young woman with locks and a beaming smile walked over. "You must be Anna," she said. "I'm Miss Joy. Want to help me paint a castle?" Anna looked at Elliot, unsure. "Go ahead," he whispered. "I'll be right here." She nodded and followed Miss Joy into the room. Elliot sat in the hallway, watching through the glass. Anna dipped her fingers in purple paint and hesitated, then pressed them onto the paper. 1 print, then 2, then 10. Her body loosened, her shoulders dropped, and laughter spilled out like light breaking through clouds. Lorraine walked in and sat beside Elliot. "Good move. She needs people," he said. "Not just us." They sat in silence for a while, watching Anna laugh again. Lorraine whispered, "That's what healing looks like." That night, Anna came into Elliot's room holding Marvin, newly dressed in a paper crown and cape. "Can he sleep with you tonight?" she asked. Elliot smiled. "Of course." She placed Marvin carefully on the pillow beside Elliot's and turned to leave, but then paused. "Dad?" He looked up. That word still stung in a good way. "Yeah? I think I believe you now. That I'm safe." He swallowed the lump in his throat. "I'm glad. And if someone else comes? I'll be here." She nodded. "I'll protect you too." Then she padded down the hall, her footsteps light. Elliot looked at Marvin's crown, the way it tilted just slightly to the left. And in that quiet room, in a house once full of silence and grief, a new kind of royalty had taken its place. One built not from blood or name, but from trust. and love, and the simple, unshakable promise that no letter, no threat, no shadow of the past would ever steal that away. The sun rose with a hesitant warmth, melting the final stubborn patches of snow around the cabin. Spring had taken its place fully now. Soft green leaves trembled in the wind, and birdsong filtered through the open kitchen window. But inside, Elliot Carter sat at the dining table, staring at a letter that chilled him more than any winter storm could. It wasn't from Rusk this time. It was from the state, a formal notification. A new claimant had emerged, someone alleging to be Anna's biological father. The letter cited the right to request a DNA test, and enclosed was a petition to pause Elliot's guardianship until the claim could be reviewed. He read the words 3 times before standing up. "Lorraine," he called. She appeared within seconds, towel in hand from drying dishes. "What is it?" He handed her the envelope. As she read, her face darkened, eyes narrowing to slits. "No name? Number just Jameson Doe and a lawyer's office in Milwaukee. This has Rusk's stink all over it," she muttered. "He's using someone. Maybe even paying them to delay the process." Anna entered just then, humming softly, carrying a drawing. "I made a picture of Marvin flying to space again," she announced, proudly holding up a swirl of colors and stars. Elliot forced a smile. "It's beautiful, sweetheart." She eyed them. "Something's wrong." No, Lorraine said, recovering quickly. "Just boring adult papers. Taxes." Anna frowned. "Do taxes make you mad?" "Only when they arrive early," Elliot said, tousling her hair. She laughed, but the moment she left the room, the weight returned. "I need to call Deanne," he said. "She needs to run this Jameson through everything, criminal records, paternity suits, anything," Lorraine added. "We can't let them do this to her again." That afternoon, Elliot and Diane sat in her office reviewing the documents line by line. The supposed father was listed with only a last known address and a sworn affidavit stating he had no prior knowledge of Anna's existence until a mutual friend informed him. "He's a ghost," Diane said. "The law firm handling this specializes in paternity defenses, and they don't take pro bono cases." "Someone's paying them," Elliot growled. She nodded. "This stalls final guardianship. We'll have to submit to a DNA test court ordered. We'll expedite it, but until then, your custody status is technically vulnerable." Elliot looked away. She finally feels safe. And now this. Diane leaned forward. "You fight this like you fought everything else. Methodical. Patient. But Elliot, if the test comes back even partially matching..." "It won't," he said firmly, "because whoever this man is, he was never in her life. And I don't care what his blood says, he doesn't get to show up now and claim what he didn't build." Diane didn't respond. She didn't need to. They both knew. The law didn't always reward love. It respected proof. When Elliot returned home, Anna was sitting on the porch with Marvin, painting his ears gold with a tiny brush. "Why gold?" he asked. "So he can hear the stars better," she said seriously. He sat beside her, unsure of how to breach the truth, then finally asked, "Anna, do you remember your dad?" She paused. "Number. Did your mom ever talk about him?" She shook her head. "Only once. She said he was gone a long time ago. Like, before I was born. Kind of gone. Would you want to meet him if he was real?" Anna stopped painting. She looked at him long and hard and said, "Are you still gonna be here?" "Yes," he said without hesitation. "Then I don't need another dad," she replied. "I already picked." His heart swelled and broke in the same moment. The next week passed like walking through fog. Anna was quieter. She didn't know the full situation. But she could feel the tension in Elliot's shoulders, the way Lorraine triple-locked the cabin door at night. The phone calls whispered from behind closed doors. One evening, as Elliot read to her, Anna asked softly, "Is someone trying to take me away again?" Elliot froze. He set the book down and looked into her eyes. "There's someone who says they might be your father. The court wants to be sure." Anna frowned. "But I know who my dad is." "I know," he whispered. "I do too." She thought for a moment. "Can I still stay here if I fail the test?" He laughed, pained. "Sweetheart, you're not the one being tested." She climbed into his lap, silent, and together they watched the fire crackle until her breathing slowed and sleep took her gently. 3 days later, They drove to the clinic for the DNA test. Anna sat in the back seat, holding Marvin tightly. Elliot watched her in the mirror, wondering how many more times she'd have to prove her right to peace. The clinic was sterile and silent, and the technician kind but robotic. Elliot and Anna gave their samples. The alleged Jameson did not show up. His test had already been submitted from another clinic. "It'll take 5 days for results," the technician said. "You'll receive notice through the court." As they left, Elliot held Anna's hand a little tighter than usual. That night, Elliot sat at his desk, reviewing an email from Ruth. She'd found connections between the law firm and a former associate of Calvin Rusk. Not direct, but enough to suggest collusion. Lorraine entered, holding a mug of tea. "They're not going to stop, are they?" she asked. "No," Elliot said, "but neither will I." He turned to her, exhaustion in his voice. "Do you ever wonder if we're strong enough for this?" She sat beside him. "Not once. You're not doing this alone." Outside, the wind picked up. Inside, the cabin remained warm, its foundation built not from blood or paperwork, but from promises whispered over storybooks, from cardboard castles, from gold-painted ears meant to hear the stars. And though the next chapter was uncertain, one thing was already written in unshakable ink. This was family. And no test could undo that. It was the 5th morning since the DNA test. Elliot hadn't slept much the night before, or the one before that. A quiet tension had settled in the cabin, thick, unspoken. Even Anna, who had learned to fill silence with humming and imaginary adventures, now kept her voice low and her drawings unfinished. She sensed it. All of it. Elliot stood at the kitchen window with a cup of black coffee, staring into the mist that hung low over the trees. Lorraine entered, still in her robe, holding her phone like it was made of glass. "It's here," she said. He turned slowly. "The results?" She nodded. Elliot took the phone, eyes scanning the message from Diane. "DNA analysis, 0% match. The claimant is not biologically related to Anna Thomas." He exhaled, long and low. His knees nearly buckled. Lorraine grabbed his arm, steadying him. "It's over, Elliot. He's not her father." He looked up at her. "Then why do I feel like it's not over at all?" Before Lorraine could answer, a sharp knock echoed at the front door. Elliot stiffened. Lorraine moved instinctively in front of Anna's bedroom door, just as Elliot walked to open it. Standing on the porch, wrapped in a trench coat and chewing gum like she owned the weather, was Diane Harlow. "I figured I'd bring this one in person," she said, holding up a thick file. "There's something you both need to see." "Vous." They sat at the kitchen table, steam rising from untouched mugs. Anna played quietly in the living room with Marvin, unaware of the conversation just beyond her hearing. Diane opened the file and laid out a sheet of photos, court documents, bank statements, emails. This man who claimed to be her father? His name's not Jameson Doe. It's Reggie Hale. He's a convicted fraudster, 3-time felon, and, she added, flipping to a highlighted record, he received a wire transfer 3 weeks ago from a shell account tied to guess who. "Rusk," Lorraine whispered. Diane nodded. "It's indirect, but enough to open a case for custodial interference and conspiracy to commit fraud. The authorities are moving in." Elliot's face hardened. "So he didn't just try to take her away. He used a criminal to do it. And he left a trail," Diane said. "Which means this time, we don't just push back, we burn the whole lie down." Later that day, Elliot sat in the woodshed behind the cabin, hammering a nail into a new frame for Anna's growing collection of art. It wasn't just a way to distract himself, it was a ritual, something real he could build with his hands while the world twisted around him. Anna appeared at the door, holding a drawing. "Can this go in the next frame?" she asked. He looked at it. The sketch showed a house, not their real one, but something more whimsical. A tree house on top of a hill, with stars dangling from branches and a moon made of cookies. He smiled. "It's perfect." She sat beside him on the wooden bench, swinging her legs. "Is the test over?" "Yes," he said gently. "And you're staying here? Forever, even if someone lies again?" "Especially then," he said. "Because truth always finds its way out." She leaned against him. That man who said he was my dad, did he want me? He hesitated. I think he wanted something, but it wasn't really you. She thought for a moment, then nodded. Okay. Just like that. Okay. Not angry, not scared, just acceptance. She had already learned that people could lie, and that she wasn't the lie. That evening, Lorraine cooked her famous pot roast, filling the cabin with the scent of garlic, rosemary, and onions. Anna set the table, placing Marvin at his usual spot with a napkin tucked into his collar. As they sat to eat, Elliot raised his glass of ginger ale. To the girl who taught me how to fight again, he said. And to the family we've built, not by blood, but by fire and choice. Anna lifted her cup of chocolate milk. To Marvin, she added solemnly, who never gave up either. They all laughed, and for the first time in weeks, the air felt clear. After dinner, Diane called again with an update. An official arrest warrant had been issued for Calvin Rusk. His known alias, his financial fraud, the forged letters, all of it was unraveling, and with the charges stacking, the DA had agreed to expedite Anna's full and permanent guardianship to Elliot Carter. It would be finalized in court in less than 2 weeks. Elliot thanked her, then walked to Anna's room. She was already in bed. Marvin tucked under her arm. He sat on the edge of her blanket. I have some good news. She blinked sleepily. Did we win? We did. She smiled, closed her eyes. Okay. Good. Before he stood, she whispered, You know what I remember most about the fire? He paused, unsure if he wanted to know. She opened her eyes again. Not the flames, not the noise. Just this smell, like burned sugar. My mom had baked cookies that night. And I always thought, if I could find that smell again, I'd find her. Elliot swallowed hard. Do you want me to try baking them? She smiled. Number, I found something better. He leaned down. What's that? You. V. He sat there long after she fell asleep, staring out the window as the last light faded over the trees. And in that darkness, where silence once felt like a curse, Elliot Carter finally understood what it meant to be chosen not by obligation, or blood, or the weight of the past, but by love, a kind that withstood lies, a kind that didn't need proof in ink, because some truths were bigger than paper. And Anna was his truth. The morning of the final guardianship hearing arrived with soft rain falling steadily on the cabin roof. Elliot Carter stood at the window, sipping his coffee, watching droplets gather and race down the glass like they were in a hurry to cleanse the past. He had dressed in a navy suit, crisp shirt, no tie. He wanted to appear respectable, not corporate. Lorraine had ironed Anna's dress the night before, carefully smoothing each fold with the kind of reverence usually reserved for heirlooms. Anna stood in the hallway now, twisting the hem of that same dress with nervous fingers. Do I have to talk again? She asked quietly. Elliot turned and knelt beside her. Not unless you want to. Diane said the judge has everything he needs. What if he says no? Her voice cracked. What if he says I don't belong to anybody again? Elliot's hands gently steadied hers. Anna, no matter what anyone says today, you belong to yourself. And to this home. To me. That doesn't change ever. Anna stared at him. Then, after a pause, she whispered, Can I bring Marvin? Of course, he smiled. He's part of the legal team by now. She gave a small laugh. It was enough. At the courthouse, the air felt heavier than it had during the temporary custody hearing. Maybe because this wasn't just about keeping Anna safe anymore. This was about making her story official not just in their hearts, but in the eyes of the law. Diane Harlow was already waiting outside the judge's chambers when they arrived. She gave Anna a warm nod and pulled Elliot aside. Good news first, she said. Rusk took a plea deal. He's out of the picture permanently. And the bad news? Elliot asked. The judge wants Anna to say a few words, Diane replied. It won't be long, but he says he needs to hear her say she wants this, that it's her will, not just yours. Elliot looked back at Anna, who was now brushing lint off Marvin's ears. She looked so small in that giant corridor. But stronger, too. Like a sapling that had bent in every storm but refused to break. She'll do fine, Elliot said. more to himself than anyone. Inside the chambers, Judge Reynolds sat in his high-backed chair, glasses resting halfway down his nose. He greeted them with a kind but formal nod. "Let's proceed," he said, motioning for them to sit. Diane began by summarizing the motion. Elliot Carter was petitioning for full permanent guardianship of Anna Thomas, age 6, survivor of a residential fire, with no surviving legal next of kin. All background checks had cleared, CPS had recommended approval, and the court had ruled against all previous fraudulent claims. "Mr. Carter," the judge said, "before I rule, I'd like to hear from the child, not to put her on trial, but to ensure we are honoring her choice." Anna looked up at Elliot, who nodded gently. She stepped forward, clutching Marvin tightly. "Hi," she said softly. "You can speak freely, Miss Thomas," the judge said. Anna took a breath. "I used to think I had no home, like, not just a house, but a place where I was allowed to be." She paused, blinking fast. "But then I found Marvin again, and I found Mr. Elliot, and Miss Lorraine. And now, I get to sleep without looking out the window all night. I don't hide snacks under my bed anymore." She looked directly at the judge. "I want to stay, not just because I feel safe, but because I feel real, like I'm not disappearing." The judge didn't speak for several seconds. He removed his glasses, cleaned them slowly, then finally said, "Thank you, Anna. That was braver than most adults I see in this courtroom." He cleared his throat. "I've reviewed the documents, the testimony, and the recommendation from CPS, and I hereby approve Mr. Carter's petition for full and permanent guardianship." Elliot let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. "Congratulations," the judge added. "And young lady, you now have the legal right to keep that bear in your life too." Anna grinned, holding Marvin up like a trophy. As they walked out of the courthouse into the wet spring air, a small group of local reporters stood waiting behind the metal barricades. One of them shouted, "Mr. Carter, any comment?" Elliot paused, looked down at Anna, who squeezed his hand. He turned to the reporters. "Yes," he said. "Love doesn't require a DNA test. It requires showing up, every single day. That's all I've got." He turned and walked away. That was all the comment the world needed. Back at the cabin, Lorraine had baked a welcome home forever cake vanilla, with too much frosting and sprinkles that stuck to every surface. Anna wore a paper crown she made herself, and Marvin got a matching one made of tinfoil. As the sun dipped low, Elliot found himself standing alone on the porch, watching the trees sway gently in the wind. Lorraine stepped out beside him, holding 2 mugs. "You did it," she said. He shook his head. "We did." She smiled. "So, what now?" Elliot looked out at the woods, then back at the warm light pouring from the windows. "Now we live," he said. "Really live. Not just survive, inside." Anna was building a tower out of blocks and narrating Marvin's imaginary journey to a moon made entirely of marshmallows. Elliot watched her for a moment longer, then stepped inside. He wasn't the same man who had once walked through this door, bitter and burdened. And Anna, she wasn't the same girl who had whispered, "Everyone has a home, except me." Because now she did. And her name was more than ink on a page. It was written into the very bones of the cabin. Into Elliot's hands, into every heartbeat that had dared to love, even when it hurt. The past had taken much from her. But today, the future finally gave something back. Her name, her family, her place. Forever. A week after the guardianship was finalized, the world seemed to exhale. The papers had been signed, the legal clouds had cleared. And for the first time since Anna had whispered those heartbreaking words in the park, life moved without fear tugging at its edges. But peace is never a permanent guest. It lingers, waits, and sometimes tests the walls it helped build. Elliot had begun taking Anna on short trips into town's simple things like grocery runs or library visits. Each one was a lesson. Not just for her, but for him too. How to exist in public, as a family, when the world still raised its eyebrows at a black child calling a white man Dad. Most people smiled. Some nodded politely, but a few looked too long, too hard, as if they were flipping through a rulebook Elliot had never agreed to. It was on one of those days, a cloudy Tuesday, that the storm came. Not from the sky, but from the ground they thought had settled. They were leaving the local bookstore. Anna clutched a copy of Charlotte's Web, her eyes sparkling. "I want to read the part where she saves him from being bacon again," she giggled. Elliot smiled. "That's the best part." Man, as they crossed the street to the car, a black SUV pulled up alongside them. The window rolled down. "Hey," came a voice, sharp, male, unfamiliar. "That your kid?" Elliot turned slowly, pulling Anna behind him without even thinking. "Excuse me?" he said. The man leaned out further. Mid-40s, scruffy beard. Eyes like cold gravel. "Just asking. Seems unusual, that's all. Never seen you with her before." "She's my daughter," Elliot said evenly. The man scoffed. "Funny, you don't look related." Before Elliot could respond, Anna spoke up. Her voice calm but clear. "He's my dad. You don't have to see it, I do." The man stared at her, then at Elliot. Something tightened in his jaw. "You people always pulling stunts. One of these days, the truth comes out." And just like that, the SUV sped off, tires screeching around the corner. Elliot crouched beside Anna, checking her eyes. She didn't cry. She didn't flinch, but her tiny hand gripped his so tightly, it left an imprint. "I'm okay," she whispered. "He's just mean." Elliot pulled her into a hug. "He's wrong, that's all." But deep inside, something old and burning returned. That familiar fire, the one that once made him build empires from ashes, was stirring again. He had thought maybe they'd outrun the ghosts, but some ghosts wore new faces. That night, he told Lorraine. She didn't react with fear. She reacted with fury. "We need to report it," she said. "This town is small, but that doesn't mean it's blind. People talk. Someone will know who he is. We don't have a plate number. We have a voice. And we have a daughter who's not going to grow up wondering if the world will ever accept her." Elliot didn't argue. But later, alone on the porch, he wondered if this was the price. Not the legal fight, not the paperwork, but the long, unspoken resistance, the constant need to prove, to explain, to shield. Anna deserved better than that. She deserved ease. Inside, she was asleep in bed. Marvin tucked under one arm, Charlotte's Web clutched in the other. Elliot sat at the foot of her bed and whispered, "You're mine, always." She didn't stir, but her breathing deepened, as if her body believed him more than her mind could yet say. 2 days later, Lorraine got a call. It was Ruth, the journalist who had helped them track Rusk's background months earlier. She sounded alarmed. "I don't want to panic you," she said, "but I just saw something on a private message board. Some guy posted a blurry photo of Elliot and Anna outside the bookstore, asking if anyone knew what a white billionaire is doing parading around a black orphan." His words, not mine. Elliot's stomach turned. "They're digging," Ruth continued. "Not just him, a few others. I don't know who they are yet, but they're spreading rumors fast. Some are saying you paid for Anna, others are talking about trafficking." Lorraine cursed under her breath. Ruth added, "I can't shut them up, Elliot, but I can expose them. You just say the word." He paused. "Number not yet. Let's not fight fire with fire." "Then what do you do?" Ruth asked. "I build a bigger truth," Elliot said. That weekend, he did something bold, something public. He wrote an op-ed for the Chicago Tribune. The title, "She's My Daughter. That's the only truth that matters." In it, Elliot didn't argue with the critics. He didn't explain away his motives. He told their story, from the park bench where he first heard her whisper, to the courthouse where she stood tall before a judge, to the simple joys of cereal mornings and bedtime hugs. "I didn't adopt Anna to make a point," he wrote. "I adopted her because family is not defined by what blood carries. It's defined by who carries you." The article went viral. Emails poured in. Letters arrived at the cabin from strangers, some sharing their own adoption stories. others apologizing for staying silent too long. A black grandmother from Alabama wrote, "Your daughter is ours now, too." Anna didn't understand all of it, but she noticed how people smiled a little longer at the grocery store, how the librarian called her Miss now, how Elliot didn't walk with that extra tension in his shoulders. But the best moment came one night, just as spring tipped into summer. They sat on the porch. Anna held Marvin, now with a new patch sewn onto his paw, Lorraine's idea. The stars were out. "Dad?" she asked, sleepy. "Yeah? If I ever have a kid, and they feel like they don't belong, I'm gonna tell them what you told me." "What's that?" She looked up at him. "Storms don't ask permission to come, but they don't stay forever." Elliot closed his eyes, his heart heavier and lighter all at once. She didn't just survive the fire. She had become its light. Summer in Illinois carried a certain hum. It wasn't just the cicadas or the breeze through the tall grass, it was the rhythm of life finally allowed to breathe. The school year had ended, and Anna was now a first grader. Her handwriting still wobbled, but her confidence had found solid footing. She spent her days climbing trees, painting Marvin new outfits, and reading chapter books with a level of seriousness that made Lorraine grin with pride. Elliot watched it all, often from the porch, a journal in his lap. The journal had started as a habit. Now it was a commitment. Every day, he wrote one page, not about business, not about court cases, but about Anna. Her victories, her fears, her questions, her laughter. He wanted her to have a record of her own unfolding, something to anchor her when she grew older, and the world, inevitably, asked who she really was. One afternoon, as he sat writing, Anna marched up the steps, face flushed with determination. "Dad," she said, placing her hands on her hips, "I need to talk to you about legacy." Elliot raised an eyebrow. "Legacy? Yes, I learned that word in a book. It means what people remember you for when you're gone, like presidents or superheroes." He closed the journal slowly. "And what made you think about that today?" "Because I saw someone throw a soda can into the lake. And I yelled at them. I said, 'Do you want your legacy to be garbage?'" Elliot blinked. "That's a very strong argument." "I want my legacy to be something good," she said, sitting beside him now. "Like Marvin. He's just a toy, but I gave him stories. Now he has a legacy." Elliot smiled, studying her. "And what do you think my legacy is?" She tilted her head, thinking. "You found me. That's pretty big." He nodded. "It is, but I think it's also what we build together. Not just what we survive." She leaned against him. "Then let's build something amazing." And in that moment, Elliot realized she wasn't just dreaming anymore. She was planning. That was the difference between safety and thriving. A few weeks later, Lorraine received a call from the director of the local community center. They were starting a summer mentorship program for foster kids and survivors of domestic trauma. They wanted Elliot to speak on opening day. He hesitated. Public attention still made him uneasy, but Anna tugged his sleeve. "You always say people need to show up. Maybe they're waiting for you to go first." He agreed. "On one condition. We do it together." Anna's eyes lit up. The day of the event arrived. The gymnasium at the community center buzzed with movement children drawing on poster boards, volunteers handing out snacks, and parents milling about. Elliot stood at the podium, Anna beside him, clutching Marvin. He looked out at the small but earnest crowd and cleared his throat. "I wasn't supposed to be a father," he began. "I didn't grow up dreaming of it. I built companies. I signed deals. I thought success was something you could measure in quarterly reports." He paused, looking down at Anna. "Then one day, I met a girl sitting beside a trash bin, whispering that everyone had a home except her, and I realized I had gotten everything in life except the one thing that mattered most, someone to share it with." Anna squeezed his hand. "Being a parent," he continued, "isn't about having all the answers. It's about showing up. Again and again. Even when it's hard. Even when it hurts. And love, real love, doesn't ask where you came from. It asks where you want to go and walks there with you. The room was quiet, not solemn, thoughtful. A few adults wiped their eyes. One child clapped, another followed. Then the whole room joined. Later, Anna was asked to draw something for the mentorship wall. She drew a tree, its branches stretched high, holding books and teddy bears in hands. At the base, two figures stood, one tall, one small, both smiling, both rooted. Back home, Elliot framed the drawing and hung it in the hallway. Anna called it the Tree of Us. It became the first official piece in what Lorraine began calling the legacy wall. More drawings followed. Photos, letters from others inspired by their story, a folded newspaper clipping from Elliot's op-ed, a thank you card from a boy who said Marvin reminded him of the brother he lost. Their home became a place not just of healing, but of shared testimony. A living archive of survival and grace. But not every chapter was easy. Some days, Anna still woke up crying. Sometimes she smelled fire in her dreams. Other times, she'd freeze when a stranger spoke too loudly. Healing, they learned, was not a straight line. But it was a walk worth taking. One evening, Elliot found Anna on the porch, staring at the stars. "Do you think my mom can see us?" she asked. He sat beside her. "I hope so. If she does, do you think she's proud of me?" Elliot hesitated. Then, with complete certainty, said, "I think she's in awe of you." Anna smiled. "Do you think she's mad I love you?" "No," Elliot said gently. "I think she's grateful someone loves you as much as she did." That night, Anna wrote a letter. Not to send, just to say what she needed. She left it under her pillow. Elliot never read it. He didn't need to. He saw its effects in the way she walked taller the next day, in the way she introduced Marvin to a new friend at the park and said, "This is my brother in bear form. He's been through stuff." By the end of that summer, Elliot made a decision. He created a foundation in Anna's name, the Anna Grace Initiative. Its mission: to support children who had lost parents to fire, foster care, or injustice. They provided art therapy, mentorship, emergency housing. Anna helped design the logo. A house with roots for a base and stars in the windows. "It's where your heart lives, even when your past tries to follow you," she explained. The initiative grew faster than anyone expected. Families wrote in from all over, donations poured in, and Elliot, once a man known only for his business acumen, was now known for something far greater. A father, a fighter, a builder of new beginnings. Legacy, Anna had said. It wasn't just what people remembered. It was what you built every day. You chose love over fear. And as the sun set on that season, Elliot knew they had already begun something that no fire, no lie, no courtroom could undo. A legacy not made of glass towers or dollar signs, but of small hands in big ones, of quiet nights and louder laughter, of a girl, a bear, and the man who saw her and never looked away. The first leaves of fall fluttered onto the cabin's porch steps like shy dancers announcing a new act. The trees along the gravel road to town had begun turning gold. Then crimson, bold, honest colors, the kind that didn't hide the season's change but embraced it. Anna loved fall. She said it smelled like pencils and soup. She had taken to collecting leaves of every shape and taping them to the kitchen wall, calling it her forest you can hug. Lorraine insisted on hot apple cider every Friday. Elliot began chopping more firewood than they needed. Not out of necessity, but because the rhythm of the axe grounding into wood quieted his mind. Change was here, and it didn't scare them anymore. On one particular Friday, a letter arrived. Thick envelope, official seal, not a bill, not a threat, but something Elliot hadn't expected. An invitation. The governor's office, a ceremony in Springfield honoring individuals who had made significant civic contributions through compassion and leadership. Elliot had been nominated by Ruth, the journalist. He chuckled when he saw her handwritten note inside. "Don't roll your eyes. You earned this, and she should see what you built." He stared at the letter for a long moment, then looked over at Anna, sitting at the kitchen table, gluing googly eyes onto leaves. "Hey," he said, walking over. "How do you feel about a road trip? The day of the ceremony?" Anna wore a dark green dress that Lorraine had let her pick from the local thrift shop. "It looks like forest armor," she'd said. Elliot wore the same navy suit he'd worn to court the day she became his daughter. They drove to Springfield under a sky the color of slate, clouds trailing behind them like silent witnesses. The event was held in a wide hall lined with portraits of past governors and plaques, etched with names of people most had forgotten. Anna squeezed his hand tightly as they entered. "You nervous?" she asked. "A little," Elliot admitted. "Want me to go up with you?" "You'll be there," he said. "That's enough." The ceremony unfolded with the expected formalities, speeches, applause, a string quartet playing soft, forgettable music. But then Elliot's name was called, and silence fell. He stepped up to the podium, cleared his throat, looked out at a crowd of suits, cameras, and strangers. Then his gaze found Anna, sitting in the front row, back straight, eyes locked on him like he was reading her a bedtime story. "I never imagined being here," he began. "Not because I didn't want to do something good in the world, but because I used to think the best thing I could build was a company. Something measurable. Something profitable. Then I met someone who measured the world in much simpler ways. A piece of bread, a dry place to sleep, a bear that kept her secrets. And I realized I had built everything except a life." He paused. "She gave me that. A life. A reason. Not because she needed saving, but because she dared to let me walk beside her while she saved herself." Applause erupted, not loud, but deep, genuine. Elliot stepped down. Anna ran up and hugged him around the waist, whispering, "That was better than Charlotte's Web." And for the first time since he'd held her trembling by a park trash bin, Elliot cried in public. Not from pain, but from pride. That night, back at a quiet Springfield hotel, Elliot sat with Anna on the tiny balcony. They shared a root beer and a bag of pretzels. Anna looked up at the stars. "Do you think people like me grow up to help other kids too?" Elliot smiled. "I think people like you grow up to change the rules entirely." She nodded, thoughtful. "Then I'll start soon." Weeks passed. The cold returned like a soft warning. One evening, Lorraine brought a package to the dinner table. "It's from Ruth," she said. Anna tore into it with ceremony. Inside was a book, hardbound, glossy cover. The title in gold letters, "The Tree of Us, Stories from the Anna Grace Initiative." Inside were stories from families who had found healing through the foundation Elliot had built in Anna's name. Poems from foster kids. Letters from adoptive parents. Crayon drawings scanned onto full pages. And in the very center, a reprint of Anna's tree, the first one she ever drew. Roots deep. Branches high. Stars in the windows. Anna stared at it, wide-eyed. "They put my tree in a book. Your legacy," Elliot said softly. She looked at him. "Number, our legacy." Lorraine raised her glass, to building something that doesn't break when life does. They all clinked their cups, juice, cider, coffee, different drinks, same table. Later that night, as Elliot tucked Anna into bed, she asked a question that took him off guard. "If I hadn't met you, who would I be now?" He paused. Saturday beside her. "I don't know," he said, "but I know you'd still be brave. You'd still find a way." She nodded slowly. "But I like this way better." "Me too." She closed her eyes. "Hey, Dad?" "Yeah? Can we make our own holiday?" He smiled. "What kind of holiday?" "A day where nobody gets forgotten." He thought for a moment. "What should we call it?" "The Day of Found Things," she said dreamily. "Like Marvin, like me." Elliot kissed her forehead. "That's the best holiday I've ever heard of." He walked to the door, pausing to watch her fall into sleep. The kind of sleep a child earns when she no longer fears tomorrow. The kind of sleep you protect with every ounce of breath in your chest. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees. Leaves let go, one by one, without fear. Because even in their falling, they belonged to the earth that had carried them. And inside that cabin, surrounded by hand-drawn forests, stuffed bears, and a wall lined with memories, a family kept growing not from blood, but from choosing each other over and over again. Where broken things begin again, where love doesn't just survive, it becomes shelter. The first snow came earlier than expected. It blanketed the cabin roof in soft white and painted the pine trees like something from one of Anna's bedtime books. Elliot had always loved winter for its silence, the way it slowed everything down and made people lean into each other a little more. This year, winter felt different. It didn't arrive with loneliness or regret. It came with cocoa on the stove, books by the fire, and Anna asking if they could make Marvin a matching scarf. One Saturday morning, while Lorraine was in town getting supplies and Anna was busy writing a story about a hedgehog who learned to bake, Elliot decided to finally fix the loose floorboard in the corner of the study. It had been bothering him for months, a small creak every time he stepped on it. He thought it was just a minor thing, maybe a warped board from last year's rain, but as he pried it up, he found something he hadn't expected. A weathered envelope wedged beneath the wood. Dust clung to the edges. No stamp, no address. Just a name in faded ink. To whom this house may next belong. He stared at it, heart suddenly heavier. The paper crackled as he opened it. The handwriting was careful, deliberate. Someone had taken their time with this. He began to read. If you're reading this, then I'm gone. And this place has been passed to hands I'll never shake. But that's how time works. It keeps going, even when we don't. My name was Robert J. McLaren. I built this cabin with my wife, Elise, in 1963. We didn't have children, not for lack of trying, but this home was our child in many ways. We poured everything into it. Every beam, every nail, every laugh by the fire. Elise passed in the winter of 2091. I stayed here because leaving would have felt like betrayal. This place held her voice, her recipes, her kindness. Elliot paused. The room around him felt stiller somehow. As if Robert's presence hadn't left, just waited. If you've come to this cabin out of pain, I hope it gives you healing. If you've come out of hope, I hope it gives you roots. And if you've come with someone smaller than you, someone who still looks at the world like it owes her an explanation, protect her. Let her draw on the walls. Let her make mistakes. Let her ask the same question 50 times. This place was meant to hold the weight of love. Let it. By the time Elliot finished, his throat was tight. He gently refolded the letter and placed it back under the floorboard, closing it like a chapter he hadn't realized he needed. That night, as the fire flickered and snow tapped gently at the windows, he told Anna what he had found. A letter? She asked wide-eyed. From a ghost? Not quite, Elliot smiled. From someone who loved this place as much as we do. Did he have a bear? No, Elliot said, chuckling, but I think he had someone he loved very much. Anna thought for a long moment. We should write one too, for the next people. What would you say? She considered. Dear future people, this house is full of love, and sometimes it's loud, but that means it's alive. If you find Marvin, take care of him. He likes warm spots and bedtime stories, and if you ever feel lost, just sit on the porch. The wind will remind you who you are. Elliot blinked, overwhelmed. That's beautiful. She grinned. I've had practice. In the following days, something shifted in Anna, not dramatically. But she began asking new kinds of questions. Big ones. Dad, what was your dad like? Elliot looked up from his coffee. He was quiet, kind. He worked with his hands. Fixed old radios. Didn't talk much. But when he did, you listened. Do you miss him? Every day. Anna nodded. I miss my mom every day too. They sat in silence for a while, letting that truth sit between them like a third person at the table. Do you think missing someone means they're still with you? She asked. Elliot reached across the table and squeezed her hand. I think missing them is how we keep them close. Later that week, Lorraine surprised them with a photo frame. Inside was a picture from the mentorship event. Elliot at the podium, Anna beside him, beaming. Underneath it, in etched lettering, "Not all heroes wear capes. Some carry bears." Anna insisted on hanging it beside the front door. "So when people walk in," she said, "they know what kind of house this is." One evening, a soft knock came at the door. It was Ruth, the journalist. "I was driving through," she explained, stomping snow off her boots. "Thought I'd check in and give you this." She handed Elliot a small envelope. Inside was a letter from a girl named Janelle, age 10, living in a group home 2 states away. "Dear Mr. Elliot and Anna, I read about you. I don't have a family yet, but I believe in them now. I believe someone is looking for me too. Thank you for making me feel found even though we never met." Anna read it twice. Then she ran to her desk, pulled out a crayon, and wrote back, "Dear Janelle, you're already part of our family. You just haven't walked through our door yet, but when you do, Marvin will save you a spot on the couch." Elliot watched her write, and he realized the house was no longer just shelter. It had become something larger, a lighthouse, quietly sending out signals to those adrift, a place where broken things were not only mended but celebrated for their scars. That night, Anna placed her new letter next to Robert McLaren's beneath the floorboard. "We're building something," she said softly. "Not just a wall of pictures, but a history of hearts." Elliot kissed her forehead. "And the best part?" She looked up. "What?" "It's only just beginning." She smiled, and as she lay down beside Marvin, snow fell again outside, silent and sure, covering the earth like a promise. Tomorrow would come, and they would meet it together. The morning sun crept through the pine trees like golden lace, spilling warmth across the porch and into the kitchen where the scent of cinnamon rolls drifted from the oven. Anna sat at the table, legs swinging under her chair, carefully crafting a sign with colored markers. The cardboard read in bright, bold letters, "Happy Day of Found Things." Underneath, in smaller handwriting, she'd written, "A day for the lost, the lonely, the found, and the family we choose." Elliot stood at the counter, pouring orange juice into 2 glasses. He watched her with the kind of smile that only years of hardship followed by healing could shape. It wasn't the smile of a man who had everything, it was the smile of a man who finally understood what mattered. "Are we sure this is a real holiday now?" he asked, setting down her juice. Anna nodded with all the certainty of a queen issuing a royal decree. "Absolutely. It's the first annual. We're making history." Lorraine entered from outside, arms full of pine cones and wildflowers. "I ran into old Mrs. Turner down the road. She said she'd come by with cookies, said she's never heard of the holiday but likes the sound of it." "See?" Anna beamed. "It's catching on already." By midday, the cabin was full. Not with crowds, but with warmth. Ruth arrived carrying a photo album of letters she'd received from kids who'd been helped by the Anna Grace Initiative. Marvin sat on a special cushion by the fireplace, wearing a paper crown Anna had made. Lorraine played jazz on the record player. Elliot grilled cheese sandwiches and soup on the stove. His suit replaced by a wool sweater Anna called his dad armor. But the best surprise came just after lunch. A white van pulled up, and out stepped a girl with tightly braided hair and a shy smile, Janelle. She held a note in one hand, the one Anna had written. "You said Marvin saved me a spot," she said, eyes wide. "So, I came." Anna didn't hesitate. She ran forward and hugged her. "You're here," she whispered. "You're really here." Janelle whispered back. "I got found." The rest of the afternoon unfolded like a memory they were writing in real time. Elliot led a nature walk to the old trail behind the cabin. Lorraine helped the kids tie wishes onto branches with pieces of fabric. Ruth set up a table where children could draw pictures of the things they'd lost and what they hoped to find. Anna and Janelle sat side by side under the tree where Elliot had first shown her how to carve her name. Now, beneath Anna plus Dad, a new name joined, Janelle. "She's really staying?" Anna whispered to Elliot later as they sat watching the stars emerge. He looked at her, brushing a leaf from her curls. She's not just staying. She's part of the family now. Anna grinned. Then Marvin needs a sibling. Elliot laughed. We'll talk to Lorraine. She knows a guy. As the sun dipped and fireflies emerged, they all gathered on the porch. Ruth raised a mug of cider. To the day of found things, she declared. May we always leave the porch light on for whoever's still out there. To found things, everyone echoed. Janelle clinked her mug against Anna's. I like your holiday. Anna smiled, the kind of smile that comes from knowing you created something real. It's not just mine, it's ours. That night, when the guests had gone and the stars blanketed the sky, Elliot sat in the study, writing his final journal entry of the year. Today, I watched my daughter welcome someone else into our family without fear, without hesitation. It reminded me that love doesn't run out, it multiplies. That found things are never truly broken. They just need someone to notice. Someone to believe. This cabin has held fire, grief, laughter, music. And now, joy. Real, ordinary, impossible joy. If someone ever reads this, know this. The world will try to name you, to define you by what you've lost or what you lack. But if you're lucky, if you're brave, and if you're open, you'll find your people, or they'll find you. Either way, keep the door unlocked. He closed the journal, added it to the shelf, then walked quietly to the girls' room. Anna and Janelle lay asleep, each curled toward the other, Marvin between them like a loyal sentinel. Elliot stood in the doorway for a long time, a quiet tear slipping down his cheek. Not from sadness, but from the overwhelming certainty that this moment was the truest success he'd ever known. He turned off the light, left the door slightly ajar, and whispered into the dark. Good night, my girls. The wind outside rustled the trees. Snow began to fall again, gently covering the cabin roof. And inside, two girls slept under a quilt of safety, memory, and unshakable love. The day of found things had ended, but the legacy it began would echo forever. The story of Anna and Elliot teaches us that family is not defined by blood, but by love, loyalty, and the willingness to stand beside someone when the world turns away. It reminds us that healing takes time, but with compassion and patience, even the most broken souls can bloom again. Most importantly, it shows that when we open our hearts and homes to others, especially the forgotten and the lost, we don't just change their lives, we transform our own. In a world so often divided, this story is a quiet but powerful call to choose kindness every single day.